Still no answers. It is a bit tricky, but not that difficult. But yeah, you can take your time. I will wait for another 30 seconds. Say. One guy is typing. Boo Balan 3132. Okay, let's see. Let's check. It seems that you are correct, but anyway, we will check. Suman is typing. Pramod is typing. 1133. 1133 or it is 1133? Which one, Suman? Pramod says 2131. Bublan says 3132. Suman says 1133. Rucha is typing 3132. Only 5 of you answered till now. And there are 23 people who have joined. Kishore and Maheshwara are typing. Okay. 3132. 3212. Kishore says 3212. Okay, I think I'm going to solve it now. So we have a class counter here, and we have one instance variable, count instance, and one static variable, count static. So what is the difference between this instance variable and static variable is, for every object that we create, a separate copy of this instance variable is going to be created for each of those objects. But the static variable, this variable is going to be shared among all the objects. So this is a kind of global variable. Okay, so let us check. So here we are creating two objects of the counter class. So let us create the objects now. So, and both of these objects will have a separate copy of only this variable, count instance, not the count static, because this is a static variable and it is going to be shared among all the objects, and only a single copy will be created. Even if we create 100 objects, still a single copy of this count static variable is going to be created. But that is not the case for this instance variable. So if we create 100 objects, we are going to have 100 copies of count instance variable and a single copy of count static variable. So let me copy this one. Okay, and this variable is initialized to 0. So just okay, this is also having a value 0. Now what happens? We are calling c1.increment. Okay, this is an instance variable, instance method. And here we are incrementing the static variable as well as the instance variable. So we are going to have a copy of the static variable also. So this one is going to be count static. And it is 0. Okay. Now here we are incrementing. First we are invoking this increment with the C1 object. So I will create the object reference name also. So this is C1 and here it is going to be C2. Okay, we are calling this increment method using the C1 object, means it is going to work with this object. So here we are incrementing the static variable. So C1 is going to increment it to 1. So this is going to become 1. And this is also going to become 1. Okay. Now what we are doing C2.increment, means here. So here also we are incrementing the static variable, but since this is a static variable, it is going to be shared by all the objects. So C2 is also going to increment the same count static variable here. Okay, and also it is going to increment its own copy of the instance variable count instance. So this is going to become 1. Now it is again we are doing C2 dot increment. So this is going to get executed using the C2 object. So this one. So again the static variable will get incremented. So this is going to become 3. And it is going to increment its own copy of count instance. So this will become 2. So now we are printing C1 dot count static. This one which is 3. And C1 dot count instance. So C1 means this object, and here we are having the value of count instance as 1. So this is going to be 3 1. Again we are printing C2 dot count static. So this is again 3, this variable, and C2 dot count instance. So this copy which is 2. So the answer is going to be 3 1 3 2. So whoever answered this as the 3 1 3 2, they are correct. Rest all of you have answered it incorrectly. So I hope this is clear. Anyone having any doubt? Those of you answered incorrectly, is it clear for you guys, or do I need to explain it once again? Okay, so I will take that as a no, and let's move on to the next question. So this is going to be the last question, and then we are going to start with the new topic, which is constructors in Java. So this is a pretty simple question. It should not take more than 30 seconds, but still I will give you 1 minute time. I think something is missing. Yeah, now try to predict this output.
Completed first year of 3 year of UG, year 4 year of UG, pursuing first year of 3 years. Basically, pursuing BTech is a eligibility. But in the MBA, I think you should only pass out soon. So I should be associate. Because most of the BTech students have only registered. That's what we want to be. Pursuing people have only registered. I think, yeah.
Okay, I see some of you are answering. Hello world Java. Bublan, there are 2 print statements. How you are giving me answer only 1? At least 2 strings will be printed, right? See, there are 2 print statements, so at least 2 strings will be printed. And try to give the new line also, because this is println and not print. Upendra says hello Java. Jogu Bindu, hello world Java. Hello Java. Okay. Most of you are answering. Suman says hello. No. Hello is not correct. Okay, so let us check now. Here we are creating a string object. So and S is the reference to it. So S will point to this, and the content is hello here. Now what we are doing, s.concat world. Yesterday I mentioned you one thing, that string in Java are immutable concept. Means even though we are trying to concat this world to the string s, so this object itself is not going to get modified because strings are immutable. Once it is created, you cannot modify them. Rather, it is a new object will get created with the content hello world. So another object will get created here, hello world. See, I'm giving this space because there is a space after here also. Okay, you see, if you check this string, there is a space here. That is why this space is also required. Anyway, those are minor things that you need to keep in mind. Now we are trying to print system.out.println s, which means we are trying to print the object that is being referenced by s. So s is still referencing to this object, not this. So the first output is going to be hello. Okay. So next, what we are doing, again we are doing s.concat Java. So here we are trying to concat Java to this string. So again, another object is going to get created, and it is going to have the content as hello Java. Now, if you see, we are doing s equals to s.concat Java, which means this s is no longer going to point to this object. Rather, it will point to this object here. Okay, and now when we are printing s, we are going to get the output as hello Java. So if I run this, see, we got the output as hello and hello Java. Okay, so those of you said hello world Java, I hope you got it cleared now why the output is going to be hello and hello Java. I think Patil, Rucha answered it correctly. Bhupender answered it correctly. And yeah, only 2 of you answered correctly. And I think more than 7 to 8 of you answered incorrectly. So I hope this is clear now why the output is going to be hello and hello Java, and why this world and now is not going to come. Okay, so I take that as a no, and so yeah, let's proceed to the new topic today, which is constructors in Java. Okay, so what is constructor? A constructor is a special type of method with the same name as the class, and it is used to initialize the objects in the class. Unlike normal methods, constructors are invoked automatically when an object of a class is created. And the primary purpose of a constructor is to assign initial values to the data members of a class and prepare the object for use. So you see, as I mentioned, let's check with the characteristics of constructors. So the first is same name as the class name. So let me take here. Let me create a new file. Class. Or maybe let us take something like vehicle. Okay, what is the first characteristics of the constructor? It is going to have the same name as the class name. So a constructor must have the same name as the class in which it is declared. So for example, if the class name is student, the constructor name should also be student. And here I have declared the class name as vehicle. So the constructor name is going to be vehicle only. We cannot give any other name. So let us have some values here. Say string class. Why this is showing error here? Class is a keyword, so that is why I was getting an error. So let me give it string vehicle type. And here, let us initialize the vehicle type to say sedan. Is the issue VHS? Void main. Why it is giving error here? Surround with try catch. Change vehicle type to static. No, it is not going. Okay, so okay, we will check one by one why this error is coming. Public class vehicle I have mentioned. So let me just do this. Okay. I was declaring it inside the main method. Okay, that is not true. I think I need to declare it here. Yeah. See, earlier I was defining it inside the main method, so that's why I was getting the error, and the constructor needs to be defined outside the main method. So let us have this variable name here, string vehicle type. Now I'm trying to initialize this vehicle type to say sedan or SUV. So let me take it as sedan only. So this is constructor. You see, the name is the same name as the class name. Okay, so this matches the first. This explains the first property. The constructor should have the same name as the class name. The next is no return type. Constructor cannot have return type, not even void. So this is very important here. So if I do something like this, void vehicle, can you tell me, this is not a constructor, but still I am not getting any error. Why so? See, this method is having the same name as the class name. So this is a constructor. But in the second point I mentioned, the constructors do not have a return type, not even void. But still I mentioned the return type as void vehicle, but I did not get any error here. Now it came, but don't know why, but it is not going to come. Yeah, can anyone guess why we are not getting any error here, even though I am using a return type for the constructor? No response. Okay. See, even though the method name is same as the class name, just because we are associating a return type here, this will be treated as a normal method in Java. Okay, just like we define something like void display. System.out.println vehicle type. Okay, this is a normal method but just because even though this vehicle is having this method is having the same name as the class name, as soon as I associated this return type here, this method is going to be treated as a normal method, just like this void display is being treated. So this is not a constructor. Okay, so keep in mind this one. The next point is automatically invoke, which means a constructor is called whenever we create an object, the constructor is going to get invoked. Okay, so if I go back to Eclipse IDE and try to create an object of this vehicle class, so let me take it vehicle deltas equals to new vehicle. So let me put a print statement here. Okay, so if I run this code now, you see, even though we have two methods, one is a normal method display and one is a special method called constructor, which is having the same name as the class name, and there is no return type associated with this one. And now I am creating a object here, but I did not invoke this display method, nor I invoke this vehicle method. So I did not do something like CellToS.display. Okay. So this method is going to get executed only when we are going to invoke this method using this object. But this constructor, I am not doing something like CellToS.vehicle. So if I for now, if I just comment this one out and try to run this program, you see I am getting this message constructor invoked. But here this method did not get invoked. It is going to get invoked only when I call it explicitly using the object. So once I do CellToS.display and I run this again, now you see first, you need to follow the like the sequence also. First, the constructor is going to get invoked because this is called automatically when the object is created. So here we are creating the object using the new keyword. So as soon as this object is created, this constructor is going to get invoked, and then we are explicitly invoking the display method using the CellToS object. So this is the difference between like the constructor and method, or you can consider the third characteristics of constructor, which is nothing but a constructor is called automatically when an object is created. So let us check the next two methods, properties, which is nothing but operator overloading allowed. We are going to see this in the next class, what is constructor overloading, but it is nothing but multiple constructor can exist in the same class with different parameter list. This is known as constructor overloading. So we can do something like this also. So this one is a constructor. We can have another constructor. Here I will take string type and this dot vehicle type equals to type. Okay, so see here we are having two different constructors inside the same class vehicle, but you see the method signature is different. What is method signature? It consists of the method name and the parameter list. Okay, it does not contain the return types and all. Method signature contains only the method name and the parameter list. Okay, you see we are having two different constructor but different method signature. Multiple constructors can exist in the same class with different parameter list. This concept is known as method overloading. And see, constructor cannot be abstract, static, or final. So since constructors are tied directly to object creation, they cannot be declared as abstract, static, or final. So we are going to see more about this when we check these modifiers like the abstract and final. So static we have already checked. So can anyone tell me why constructor cannot be static? Okay, no response. So constructor cannot be static because static belongs to class, not the objects. But as I mentioned in the first character, not this one, the third property, it is automatically invoked when an object is created. So it is only related to objects. It is not related to static. So why do we make it static uselessly, right? So that is why constructor cannot be static. And why it cannot be abstract or final, we are going to check when we read more about the abstract and the final keyword. So these were some of the characteristics of constructors. Now we move on to the types of constructor. Here we have two different types, two or more than two actually. One is default constructor or the no args constructor, which means default constructor is declared when we as a programmer do not write any constructor explicitly. So if I go back to this any of the files here, so for example, if I go back to this test.java, let us check a simple file. Here you can consider this one only. See, here I did not create any constructor, right? But what the compiler is going to do, it is going to create a default constructor by default, which means compiler is going to add this code. So the compiler will create something like this. Main. Okay, you see, this is a constructor. Why? Because this is having the same name as the class name, and there is no return type associated with this method. So this is a constructor, and this is going to be added automatically by the compiler. If we don't mention it explicitly, that point is important. Compiler will add the default constructor only if we do not write any constructor in the program. Okay, even if we write a single constructor, this default constructor is not going to get added by the compiler. So there is one thing that this super will also remain. Okay, so this is the code that the compiler is going to add whenever we do not create any constructor in the class explicitly. But even if we create a single constructor, so for example int x, and we write some code here. So for example, y equals to x. In this case, we are defining the constructor, right? As a programmer, we are writing the constructor. Even though this is not a default constructor, this is a parameterized constructor. Compiler is not going to add the default constructor anymore because we are already having a constructor in the program. Okay. So this was about default constructor. And see, there is a difference between this default constructor and the no argument constructor. Even though both of their method signature is same, which means like they are not going to accept any parameter, the only difference lies that when we create the constructor as a programmer, so if we do something like this, main, some code here, so this looks same like the default constructor, but the difference is like we are adding this as a programmer, we are adding this in the code explicitly. Compiler is not adding it by default. So this is going to be it is going to be called as no argument constructor, not a default constructor. Okay. And the other type of constructor is nothing but this parameterized constructor. It is nothing but this one. Here we are going to the constructor is going to accept certain parameters. And yeah, so this is what the parameterized constructor is. So and how to invoke this parameterized constructor is like whenever you create the object, instead of like here I have in this case I have hard coded the vehicle type. So that this is not being, the type is not being passed dynamically when I am creating the object. But if I try to create another object here, say vehicle Thar equals to new vehicle. Okay, just a minute. Can you tell me what is going to be the output of this program now? Anyone? What is going to be the output of this code? You can check the code here. I will give you 30 seconds to answer. Okay, I got answer from only one guy, Joseph, who says constructor invoked. Joseph, you are absolutely correct. The output is going to be constructor invoked only. Why? Because here, when we are trying to create this vehicle object, this default, not the default constructor, rather this zero argument constructor is going to get called automatically. So we are going to print this message constructor invoked. But see, there is another constructor here. So as I mentioned, the constructor is going to get invoked automatically when an object is getting created. So here I am creating an object, but this constructor got invoked, but this constructor did not get invoked. Why? Because see, this constructor is expecting a parameter also. So whenever we create an object and pass a parameter, in that scenario, this vehicle constructor is going to get executed. So if I do something like, say, if I pass the vehicle type as SUV here, now if I try to execute this, now you will be able to see the output as parameterized constructor invoked. So if I call this, run this, you see parameterized constructor invoke. Now, why this constructor is not getting invoked? Because see, when creating the object, I am passing a parameter, and this method signature, this vehicle, and the parameter list is matching with this method, not this one. So if I create another object, or if I say just uncomment this one, let me uncomment this. Let me comment out this display invoke. Now, if I run this program, the output is going to be constructor invoked as well as, or let me rename it as no args constructor invoked. Okay. So now the output is going to be no args constructor invoked followed by parameterized constructor invoked. Why? Because in this scenario, I am creating two objects. Vehicle Seltos equals to new vehicle, and this Thar equals to new vehicle, and I'm passing one parameter here. So this method signature is the method name followed by 0 parameter list. So this is going to match with this constructor here. So that is why this will get executed first. Similarly, when I create this object, I am passing this SUV here. So this method signature is going to be matched with this constructor, the parameterized constructor. So the output is going to be the parameterized constructor invoke. So when I run this, you see, I got this. No args constructor invoked and parameterized constructor invoked. Okay, so let me do one thing here. Okay, you see one thing. This is a static method. Okay, why? Because I have used the keyword static here. So if I remove this static keyword, this is going to be an instance method, which means it belongs to the object and not to the class. So, and if I, what it means by it belongs to the class means, if we need to invoke this method, we will have to do it with the object only. See, now I am invoking it directly without any object, and I am getting an error here. So if I try to run this program, I am getting here, cannot make a static reference to the non-static method display from the vehicle type. Okay, so this is a static method, and from inside a static method, we cannot invoke a instance method without creating any object. Okay, so I will just note it down. Or I will write it in Notepad. Inside a static method, we cannot invoke any instance method without object creation. Okay, you need to remember this point. This is very important. See, now this is the instance method. Why? Because there is no static keyword associated with this method name. And now I am trying to invoke this display method from a static method. Now this main is a static method, right? So I'm trying to invoke an instance method inside a static context without creating any object. So that is why I'm getting this error here. But now if I do something like seltos.display, now if I run this program, you see this method is invoked now, which means there is no issue now. Why? Because I am invoking this method with the help of an object. Okay, so you need to remember this point. Inside a static method, we cannot invoke any instance method without object creation. Okay, I hope there is no doubt till now. Okay, so let us do some output based questions. Just give me a few minutes. You tell me about this. Which of the following is true about Java constructor? First one is constructor have a return type of void. Next is constructor must always be public. Third point is constructor is automatically called when an object is created. And the fourth point is constructors can be defined explicitly. No, constructors can only be defined explicitly. Which one is correct? This is a super easy question and you should not take more than 5 seconds to answer this. Third option. What is the third option? Constructor is automatically called when an object is created. Yes, correct. So the first point is constructor have a return type of void. No, this is not wrong. Constructor do not have any return type. The next point is constructors must always be public. No, this is not true actually. Actually, the type of the constructor depends on the class. So this is also an important point here. I think I have included this point in the PPT. Yeah, you see, this property that access modifier of constructor is same as that of the class. This is true for any type of constructor. Okay, it need not be default constructor, but it is true for parameterized constructor also. So the access modifier of constructor is same as that of the class. So if we do something like class test, can you tell me what is the type of the constructor here, or the access modifier of the constructor in this case? It is going to have the same access modifier of the class, but what is going to be the access modifier? Is it going to be public? Is it going to be static? Is it going to be final? Is it going to be protected? Is it going to be private or something else? Anyone? Forget about the constructor. Now tell me what is the type of the class here? What is the access modifier of the class? Access modifier I explained you yesterday only. I see two of them are typing. Test, no. Test is a class name. I am asking about the access modifier. There are 4 access modifiers in Java, no? Public, private, and all those things. Rucha says public. Okay. Anyone else? Chandra says public. Okay. Okay, 2 of you answered and both of you answered it incorrectly. See, I already mentioned if there is no access modifier mentioned, then by default, the type is going to be default. If you remember, I explained about 4 access modifiers yesterday. Okay, this public, protected, default, private. See, default in the bracket, it is written no keyword. I don't know why it is written, but the point is, if I'm not mentioning any access modifier here before this class name, by default, it is going to be default. Okay, so keep this in mind. So now on the same context, you tell me what is going to be the access modifier of this constructor. Is it going to be default? Is it going to be public? Is it going to be private? Is it going to be static, final? What? No answer still now? Okay, fine. See, this class is having class is of type default. Okay. If I am not mentioning anything public, private, or something like that, by default, it is going to be default. So on the same, just because the constructor is going to have the same type as the class type, since the class is default, so the constructor is also going to be default. But if the class was public, so if it was something like public class test, even though we don't mention that public test here, the default type is going to be public only. Okay, so it is going to have the same type as the class. Now your question is, what if the class is private? Will the constructor will also be private? The answer is no, because the top level classes can only have 2 access modifiers, which are nothing but public and default. Okay, the top level classes cannot be protected or private. So if I go back here and try to make this class as private, you see I'm getting an error here. Okay. Similarly, if I try to make it protected, I'm going to get again an error, I think. Okay, still I'm getting the error. But if I make it public, the error is gone. So if I remove everything, the error is gone. Why? Because by default, the type is default now. So even if I type it default, I don't think we need to explain this default here. But anyway, the type, we are not getting any error here. Means by default, it is default only. Okay, so I hope this one is clear. So this is about this point. If I go back to the PPT, so the access modifier of the constructor is same as that of the class name. And this property holds true for every constructor, okay? Not only the default constructor. So I will mention it in bracket also. This holds true for all types of constructors. And so if we check the properties of the default constructor, it is always a no argument constructor. And the second point is access modifier. The third point is it has only one line super. The super class is nothing but it is going to invoke the parent class constructor. So we are going to read this when we study about inheritance. And one important thing is this default constructor is created by the compiler, not the JVM. Okay, some of you might get confused that JVM creates the default constructor, but that is not true. It is actually the compiler that will create the default constructor. Okay, and the most important point is like it is going to be created only if we as a programmer do not mention, do not write any constructor inside the class. So if you don't define a constructor, Java will provide a default constructor. So this point needs to be added also. Okay. So this is a small point, the difference between constructor and method. I think we have some time, we can continue. What are the differences between method and constructor? So the first one is method can be executed when we explicitly call it. This one I already explained using this display method. So if I remove this, if I comment this out, you see I did not call this method explicitly. So if I run this program, I am not getting this method invoked as the output, but I am getting this these two as output. No args constructor invoked and parameterized constructor invoked. Why? Because unlike method where we have to call invoke the method explicitly, this constructor will automatically get invoked when we create the object. So here we are creating two objects, so 2 times we are getting this output. So even if I create, say, this one again, okay, so see, I am creating 4 objects here. Okay, so what is going to be the output is we are going to get this 4 times. Why? Because every time we create an object, the constructor is going to get invoked. Okay, see, we got this 4 times. So let us check the second difference. These all things I already explained. Method should have a return type and constructor do not have any return type. A method can be executed n number of times on object and constructor will get executed only once per object. Okay, only once per object. It does not mean that it will get executed only once. It is once per object. So this is important. There is a difference between getting executed only once and getting executed only once per object. So this per object is the key. What it means is like if we create 100 objects, the constructor is going to get invoked 100 times. And the only point is method name will not have the same name as class name. No, this is not true. I need to change this because method name can have the same name as class name. So I explained you earlier also. So if I change this to, if I just associate a return type with this will be treated as a simple method. So now if I run this program, What is the error? Okay, it is giving me error because like I am using this void here. I think this point is true actually. Yeah, actually this is true. We cannot have the method name in the same name as the class name. Okay, it is not going. The compiler is not going to treat this as a normal method because so this point is actually true. This the method name cannot have the same name as the class name. Okay, even though we are associating with a data type with this, but when we try to create the object, we are getting an error. But if I remove this here, now the error is gone. But as soon as I create the object, it is going to throw an error because this is expecting to invoke the constructor, but it is already having void here. Okay, so that is why a method name cannot have the same name as the class name. So here the name and in contrast, the constructor name will be the same as the class name. Okay, so these were the differences between a normal method and a constructor. So let us check some output based questions again. We have some time. Tell me which one is correct. What happens if you do not define a constructor in Java class? The first option is the program will not compile. The compiler provides a default constructor. The class cannot be instantiated. It means we cannot create object from the class. Okay. Class instantiation means creating an object from the class. The constructor from another class will be used. So which one is correct here? B222 B2. Yeah. So all of you are correct. So the answer is the compiler is going to provide a default constructor. Yeah. Okay. Now try to predict the output of this one. Anyone? None? So why we need constructor to run our program? See, it is not mandatory to define a constructor. So all the programs I was using here, like if you check any of the programs here, I did not define a constructor here. Okay, but still the program was running. So if your question is like why need constructor to run our program, so this question is kind of ambiguous. I think you are asking what is the need of constructor. So the need of constructor is to initialize the object. Okay, so we do not need constructor mandatory to like what to say to we do not need to mention it. We do not need to include the constructor mandatorily in our program. Even if we don't include, the compiler is going to the compiler is going to automatically create the default constructor. And what is the need for the constructor? It is required to initialize the objects in the class, object or the instance variables of the class. So suppose we have a class something like this, say class student, and it is having say two variables, int roll number and string name. Okay, and we are not having any constructor inside the class. So now what we are going to do, suppose I am creating an object here, class test. So I am writing PSVM, which means public static void main. Now what I am trying to do, I am trying to create a object here. Student s equals to say new student. Okay, I created this object here. So what is going to happen? So it has two, this student object is having two variables, role and name. So if I include this role and name, and if you check the type of the variable, it is an instance variable. So by default, the value is going to be 0 for the roll number because this is an integer. And this is, since this is a string, the default value is null for strings. So I have created an object here, and yesterday I mentioned that object is a real world entity. Okay, so and any object actually has a physical existence in the real world. So does this make any sense here? When I created the object here, student s equals to new student, what it means, this object is going to get created and it is going to have two variables, role and name. And by default, the value is going to be 0 and null because this is the instance variable. And by default, the values of the instance variable are 0 for integer variables and null for string variables. So we are going to have this s pointing to this object. But this object, it is a real world. You can consider that this is nothing but a real student, and that student is having roll number as 0 and name as null. So does that make any sense? It does not make any sense, right? So this is where the constructor will come into picture. It will automatically initialize the the instance variables. So if I do something like this, if I include the constructor here, and see here we are not writing any constructor, but I mentioned that the compiler will by default provide a default constructor, right? But that default constructor will only contain this super. Even though compiler is adding this constructor by default, it is still not initializing this roll number and name. It is not providing any initial values to the instance variables of this class, right? So it is just a kind of formality, or like it is going to invoke the the parent class constructor. So we're going to see more about that when we study about inheritance. So anyway, the roll number and name are still not initialized, even though the compiler is providing the constructor by default. Okay, so this is where the constructor will come into picture. Here we can simply do something like role equals to say 10 and name equals to Saurav. Okay, so as soon as the object is created, so this constructor is going to get invoked. Okay, because constructor, now that we are writing our own constructor, the compiler is not going to create the default constructor. So as soon as this student object is created, this constructor will be called. See, we are not doing any action here, right? We are we have a display method here, void display. And this display method is going to print the name and roll number. So I'm writing SOPLN. SPLN is nothing but system.out.println. I'm writing it in short form. See, I did not perform any action yet, right? After this line. But now I need to print it. So if I do something like s.display, now it is going to print the roll number as 10 and name as Saurav. Okay. But if I remove this, if I just comment this display out, this is not going to get invoked. But you see, we have this data initialized now. Now we can perform anything that we need. Okay. So now you can ask me why we need to do this in constructor. Why can we have a method something like this? Void set variables. Why cannot we do something, the same code here? Role and name, I'm going to initialize inside this method. And let this be empty. So what is the issue here? Why cannot we do something like this? Yes, we can do. There is no problem. But the thing is, it does not look good. So when I'm creating an object, I will have to include a function call here, s.set variables. Okay, so I will have to explicitly call this method so that this roll number and name gets initialized. But with constructor, what it was happening when I'm creating the object, it is automatically invoking the constructor, And inside the constructor, we are having this initialization part, wherein we are initializing the roll number and the name. So this is what explains the need of constructors in the Java class. So I hope that makes sense now. Siddhant, is it clear? Yeah. Okay. Okay, guys. So if you have any doubt, you can ask, or I think we can regroup again on Thursday, because tomorrow is a public holiday at NILIT Chennai. So there is not going to be any class tomorrow. Okay. So general question, in real-time data engineering job role, Java code is using. You can use any programming language, but mostly 95% of the organizations will going to use Python only. Okay. So Java, we are learning to understand Hadoop technology. Yeah, kind of you can say, but even though these topics are not going to be used in Hadoop. Yeah, thank you, Mohini. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, I think we can end the meeting for today and regroup on next on Thursday. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I am ending the meeting, and I hope no one is having any doubt. Okay.